Before we go, let's take a look at a few interesting tweets that came my way about tonight's show from Vicky. Your angle this evening, April 25th, hit the nail on the head with these district judges controlling our lives. Congress should get this under control, drain the swamp. And from Adam, I love Raymond Arroyo. He has an interesting several news stories each week. Oh, we all love Raymond. And from Lisa, dude, a judge in Cali shouldn't make decisions that negatively impact me in Connecticut. Abuse of power and judge shopping at its worst. From Sarah, sick and tired of Republicans doing nothing about illegal immigration. Wow, that's a lot. That's not just one or two. I love it. Remember, tweet me at Ingram Angle. I'll see you on radio tomorrow morning. That's all the time we have. But guess what? You are lucky, very fortunate, very blessed, because you have Shannon Bream and the Fox News at Night team. They are up next with another fantastic show. All the news of the day and the opinion that you need to get you through the rest of this day. See you tomorrow.
Yeah, that's right. Who doesn't love Raymond, by the way, Laura? He's a very popular guy.
I don't know.
Thank you so much. Welcome to Fox News at Night. I'm Shannon Bream in Washington. Coming up, Veterans Affairs nominee Dr. Ronny Jackson under fire on numerous fronts, as several Democrats say they're not even going to think about voting for him if he's for privatizing the system. GOP Congressman Mark Walker weighs in on Jackson's troubles and how to fix the VA. Plus, the president's travel ban 3.0 gets its day at the Supreme Court. Is the administration poised for a victory? Our legal eagles will debate. But first, this is a Fox News Alert. Admiral Ronny Jackson facing explosive new allegations tonight of drinking and driving and wrecking a government vehicle. The president's embattled pick to lead the Veterans Affairs Department was spotted on Capitol Hill tonight, reportedly meeting with Senator Tom Tillis, who is a member of the VA committee. There are reports that Republican support for Jackson's confirmation is dwindling. He's anxious to answer the charges. We've got team coverage tonight. Coming up, Kristen Fisher will have details on Rudy Giuliani's efforts to wrap up the special counsel investigation. Plus, Chief Intelligence Correspondent Catherine Herridge reports on James Comey and his friendship with a law professor who also had a special deal with the FBI. Was a line crossed? But first, we begin with Chief National Correspondent Ed Henry on the latest on Dr. Jackson. Ed.
Shannon, great to see you. Breaking tonight, Fox has confirmed that President Trump met today for the second straight day with Rear Admiral Ronny Jackson, and he's hanging in for now amid reports that the White House is bracing for the possibility, at least, that he will throw in the towel. I spoke tonight with White House spokesman Raj Shah, and he said the president still supports Jackson, but he added, quote, "We're prepared for anything." And so is Jackson, who told reporters many of these new allegations are not true after Senator John Tester, the top Democrat on the Vets Committee, released a summary of conversations with 23 current and former colleagues of Jackson, most of them still in military uniform, who charged misconduct, including allegations he repeatedly drank on duty and has an explosive temper. Now, this report charges while Jackson had to be on call if the president had a health issue, quote, on several occasions, Jackson would reach for the medical bag while intoxicated to show he was in charge. On at least one occasion, Dr. Jackson could not be reached when needed because he was passed out drunk in a hotel room. The report also alleging, quote, at a Secret Service going-away party, Jackson got drunk and wrecked a government vehicle. That report came just hours after Press Secretary Sarah Sanders claimed the White House did a good job of vetting this nomination. Republican Jerry Moran says the nominee told him in private he never had a drink on duty and was blunt about saying he's not really sure what to believe amid all these allegations. As Democrats suggest, the nomination may be doomed.
Do you feel like he was forthcoming with you in this meeting about these new issues?
I don't know I don't have any sense that I was not told the truth until I have more information.
They are serious, credible, profoundly significant. I see no realistic path forward for this appointment, and the administration has failed, abjectly and utterly failed to do proper vetting.
Jackson has denied these salacious allegations, and the White House has been defending him, in part by citing glowing performance reviews by then-President Barack Obama, like this one, October 2016. Ronny does a great job, genuine enthusiasm, poised under pressure, incredible work ethic, and follow-through. Ronny continues to inspire confidence with the care he provides to me, my family, and my team, continued to promote ahead of his peers. Meanwhile, the president is finally getting a vote on the Senate floor tomorrow for his pick to be Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, who is, of course, the current CIA director. Here's the Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell on that on Fox.
And there are now 5 Democrats who've come on board. There should have been a lot more. This nomination really shouldn't have been so contentious, but nevertheless, we have the votes, and he'll be confirmed tomorrow.
Now, the president's also finally getting a vote tomorrow on his ambassador pick for Germany, Richard Grenell, former Fox contributor. He's been particularly upset about that, the president, because of all the Democratic delays, which are finally ending because German Chancellor Angela Merkel is coming to the White House on Friday. It would have been embarrassing for Democrats to continue to hold that up, Shannon.
Timing can be everything. Ed Henry, thank you very much. Well, if he manages to get past the allegations about his behavior, Democrats worry Dr. Jackson will become a pushover for the Trump administration when it comes to reforming the Department of Veterans Affairs.
The political people in the White House push so hard for privatization, do the Koch brothers bidding. That's what they're all about. To the point that I was going to ask at the hearing, how hard are you going to fight? Are you willing to be fired making that fight for veterans?
Well, the VA has been called the swampiest of the D.C. agencies. That's saying something. Even Democrats like Senator Brown questioned ousted Administrator David Shulkin's efforts to try to reform it. So let's talk about it with North Carolina Congressman Mark Walker, chairman of the Republican Study Committee. Great to see you tonight.
Always a privilege.
Okay, so let's talk about this issue with Dr. Jackson. First of all, I know on the House side, you don't have to play a part in confirming him, but how concerned are you about the allegations swirling around and now questions arising about whether he's going to get to a confirmation hearing?
Well, any kind of allegations as members of Congress, whether you're in the House or Senate, are something that we should take serious. However, we've seen a pattern of character assassination that's happened for many of these nominations to be confirmed. But I look back at President Obama's. Ed Henry mentioned the 2016 remarks. President Obama also in 2014 gave great praise to the doctor as far as how he had connected and traveled with his family. So this wasn't just a one-time. President Obama said over the years that this gentleman performed great service. So it's interesting this information only comes out now. It is something that needs to be vetted, but I believe from what I've seen, this is a man of character. Time will tell.
It will, and he says he's looking forward to the hearing. He wants to get in there and answer the questions, so he's anxious to rebut what's being said about him. In the meantime, a number of prominent Democrats in the Senate have said it's complete no-go for him if he's going to be for privatizing in any way the Veterans Administration. You heard from Senator Sherrod Brown there. Here's a little bit more about what he had to say about whether the vets want that or not.
I don't know any veterans, organizations or individual veterans, the hundreds of veterans I talk to pretty regularly in Ohio. I don't know of any that thinks that privatizing the VA does anything except enrich the owners of the new privatized VA and compromise the care of veterans.
What do you make of this? Because this is a litmus test for a lot of these Senate Democrats.
It is. There are pros and cons to privatizing the VA. Some of the bureaucracies have infiltrated some of these organizations, so sometimes they're a little slanted. Could you be able to cut costs, maybe even to shorten the times? You could. But remember, veterans have served the federal government, so ultimately it is the federal government's responsibility. If you push that off to the private sector, that could create additional problems. Is it in need of some reform? There are some great reforms. 2017, we've added to the Veterans Choice Act, which allows after 30 days for these veterans to be able to have quick care. We saw back in the Obama administration some very strong horror stories over that time. So in members of the House and the Senate, we continue to try to improve, but it is a big leap to go to the privatization at this point.
Well, and I saw an interesting stat today. I'd heard some numbers thrown around, but we looked at this in this study by the Military Times, saying that last year about a third of all medical appointments were at sites outside the Veterans Health Administration. They say in some part this is already happening simply because the VA is so overwhelmed. Numbers of people, 10 different people either on a permanent or interim basis over the last 10 years or so have headed up this agency, many of them coming in with great promise and bipartisan support. Why is it so hard for our veterans to get this right?
Well, I believe we've not had the proper legislation that held people accountable. We recently passed legislation in 2017, again under this administration, that allowed us for the very first time to go after employees that weren't doing their job. I believe the last record that we've counted, 1,873 employees have either been fired, removed, or demoted in 1 year. Part of our RSC budget that we're adding to that is to expand that to all federal employees. Imagine that federal employees in these agencies that are part of the swamp actually have to do their job during the day instead of being protected by federal law.
Well, a lot of folks would like to see that. They'd like to see just fewer federal employees altogether. And they've often talked about how hard it is if somebody has legitimately done something wrong. It's still difficult to make sure they get through the disciplinary process and have real accountability.
Shannon, there's no question about that. Serving on the House Oversight Committee, I remember we brought in witnesses that had observed whistleblowers of people watching certain websites all day long and not really doing their job, but there was no accountability. What we're trying to do is expand the Whistleblower Act to increase and to add across the line to all federal agencies. That way we can hold more of these federal employees accountable.
Congressman and RSC Chairman, great to have you with us tonight. Thanks for stopping in.
Always a privilege. Thank you.
All right, the latest addition to the president's legal team has been very vocal about letting special counsel Robert Mueller do his job. And tonight, there are new indications that could include an interview with the president himself. Kristen Fisher is tracking all of the latest developments, including a surprise meeting between former New York Mayor Rudy Giuliani and Robert Mueller. What can you tell us, Kristen?
That's right. Hey, Shannon. Well, when Rudy Giuliani joined the president's legal team last week, it wasn't clear what exactly his role would be. But now it appears that he'll be taking point with Robert Mueller. Sources tell Fox News that he's taken over discussions with the special counsel about a possible interview of President Trump. And the negotiations remain ongoing even after that FBI raid on the president's personal attorney, Michael Cohen. And that raid is said to have really rattled the president, making him much more resistant to sitting down with the special counsel. And remember, this is the very issue that reportedly divided the president and his former lead attorney, John Dowd. Part of the reason Dowd resigned was because he believed an interview with Mueller was too risky, and it appeared that the president was poised to ignore that advice. Then the Cohen raid happened. Well, then 10 days later, Giuliani joined the president's legal team on the Mueller probe, working alongside Ty Cobb, Jay Sekulow, and 2 other attorneys. In a statement to Fox Tonight, Giuliani says that, quote, "The objective of our team is to end this investigation and distraction from the critical issues facing our president as quickly as possible. The president has produced 1.2 million documents. That is historically unprecedented. We believe it presents overwhelming proof that the president did not collude with regard to the 2016 election. If anything else is needed, we will consider it if there is an open mind as to the merits." So it would appear that last sentence, is a direct reference to a possible interview of Trump by Mueller. As for that first sentence about ending the investigation, well, that is exactly why White House officials say they're so excited that Giuliani joined the team.
We think that given the fact that there's been so much time and money and energy spent on trying to prove Russian collusion, and there's simply no evidence for it, that, maybe Rudy Giuliani can, figure out a way to move this investigation toward its end.
As for whether the president should fire Mueller or the deputy attorney general, Giuliani's been very vocal that both should be allowed to do their jobs. He just wants the investigation to end. And soon, Shannon.
Okay. Kristen Fisher, thank you for all the new details. Well, Michael Cohen, the president's personal lawyer, is planning on asserting his Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination in a civil suit brought by adult film performer Stormy Daniels. She says she had a one-night stand with President Trump in 2006, and she wants a non-disclosure agreement invalidated, although she's pretty much told the story everywhere. Cohen's lawyer says a separate criminal investigation overlaps with the issues in the lawsuit brought by Daniels, so his client needs to protect himself legally. Daniels' attorney calls Cohen's pleading the Fifth a stunning development. Well, during a town hall tonight, fired FBI Director James Comey confirmed that the DOJ Inspector General is taking a look at how he handled his memos detailing conversations with the president. Comey insists he didn't break the law.
I mean, is it okay for somebody at the FBI to leak something, an internal document, even if it's not classified? Isn't that leaking?
Well, there's a whole lot wrong with your question, Anderson. I think of a leak as an unauthorized disclosure of classified information.
Really? That's it?
There was nothing protected about this. It wasn't classified. It wasn't privileged.
Well, about those memos, new questions tonight over Comey's friendship with a Columbia law professor, as Fox News has learned that professor also had a special arrangement with the FBI. Chief Intelligence Correspondent Catherine Herridge reports on whether a line may have been crossed. Catherine?
In an email to Fox News, Columbia law professor Daniel Richman confirmed he worked for then FBI Director James Comey as a special government employee. known by the shorthand SGE, on an unpaid basis. Sources familiar with Richmond's FBI work said Comey assigned him to special projects. He had a security clearance as well as badge access to the building. Republican lawmakers want more answers.
Maybe we need to talk to Mr. Richmond under oath in front of members of the Judiciary and the Oversight Committee. It'd have been nice if we'd had a full understanding of the full relationship that Mr. Comey had with the guy who orchestrated the leak.
During his June 2017 testimony, Comey did not describe Richmond as an FBI employee. The former director testified that he gave the memos documenting conversations with the president to Richmond to kickstart what is now the Mueller probe.
I asked a friend of mine to share the content of the memo with a reporter. Didn't do it myself for a variety of reasons, but I asked him to because I thought that might prompt the appointment of a special counsel.
Who was that?
A good friend of mine who's a professor at Columbia Law School.
Another special government employee who has come under scrutiny was Hillary Clinton aide Huma Abedin. Judiciary Committee Chairman Senator Chuck Grassley, among others, previously questioned Abedin's special status that allowed her to work at the Clinton State Department and private sector at the same time. While the FBI declined to answer specific questions about Richmond's role, Fox News understands Richmond was sent talking points on the Clinton email investigation, comparing and contrasting Clinton's use of an unsecured personal server for government business with the case of retired General David Petraeus and Sandy Berger, the late national security advisor under President Clinton. Three sources tell Fox News that some or all of the Comey memos were shared with at least one other person beyond Professor Richmond, and former U.S. Attorney Patrick Fitzgerald was identified as the likely recipient. Mr. Fitzgerald, who is a former special counsel and now one of Comey's personal attorneys, did not respond to requests for comment. Shannon?
Catherine Herridge, thank you very much. Well, amid all that business goes on at the White House, Apple CEO Tim Cook met with President Trump today to discuss trade tensions with China. The president has criticized the technology giant in the past, specifically over its decision not to cooperate with law enforcement and break iPhone encryption. Cook also met with economic advisor Larry Kudlow. Well, positive news to report tonight on the health of former President George H.W. Bush. 41, as he's called affectionately, has been moved continue his recovery from a blood infection over the next several days. Bush's doctors are, quote, very pleased with his progress. He is alert and talking with hospital staff, family, and friends. Well, I spent the day today at the Supreme Court. Straight ahead, a rare chance to hear the justices' voices themselves. Moments from today's arguments over the White House travel ban. It is unusual to get same-day audio from inside the court. We want to play some moments you may find stunning.
That's a really new development where a district court asserts the right to strike down a federal statute with regard to anybody, anywhere in the world.
And a jury begins the process of deciding Bill Cosby's fate, asking a very interesting question just minutes into their deliberations. What was it? And later, it's a Fox News at Night exclusive. We ride along with U.S. Marshals on their operation to make America safer. You'll only see it here. Stay tuned. Well, the Supreme Court hearing one of its most controversial cases of the entire term today, President Trump's travel ban. And of course, there was plenty of discussion of the president's past statements. The high court appears to be split along ideological lines. A lot of eyes on Justice Kennedy. Could he be the swing vote again? Well, we'll be watching for a decision by late June. In the meantime, let's break it down. Talk about it with Harry Litman, former U.S. attorney, and constitutional attorney Robert Barnes. Great to have both of you with us tonight.
Thanks for having us.
Okay, now, Harry, you have spent time over there as a clerk to more than one justice. You've also co-clerked with Justice Kagan, who now sits on the high court. What did you make of what we heard from the bench today, Harry?
Well, look, it was a hot bench. I tend to agree with your observation, Shannon, that it looked as if Justice Kennedy was going to vote to uphold the ban, and possibly even a couple more. It might be as much as 7-2. But the real, as you say, the real sort of 900-pound gorilla in the room were these former comments of the president when he was campaigning, and that gave the government attorney some trouble. But what the attorney said is, look, even if in his heart of hearts President Trump was motivated by animus against Muslims, you should still uphold the ban out of deference to the executive. And my best guess is that principle is going to prevail.
Well, and you know, it all goes back to this question of whether there is religious discrimination afoot in putting together this ban. Critics say that it is aimed at Muslims, and yet, you know, the current ban now has North Korea and Venezuela, obviously not majority Muslim nations. This is what Justice Alito had to say. Nice to have the same day audio. Here's his take on whether or not this is a Muslim ban.
Mr. Katyal, would any reasonable observer reading this proclamation, without taking into account statements, think that this was a Muslim ban? I mean, I think there are 50 predominantly Muslim countries in the world. Five predominantly Muslim countries are on this list. The population of the predominantly Muslim countries on this list make up about 8% of the world's Muslim population. If you looked at the 10 countries with the most Muslims, exactly one, Iran, would be on that list of the top 10. So would a reasonable observer think this was a Muslim ban?
If it were.
All right, Robert, I send that to you. Is that going to be a strong enough argument to get 5 votes at least together to uphold this thing?
Well, I think definitely. I think the first part of the challenge is there's really no First Amendment basis that foreign aliens have any First Amendment constitutional rights, and there's never been any precedent that says the exclusion of foreign aliens constitutes the establishment of religion under the First Amendment anyway. But putting that aside, the reality here is, as the Solicitor General said before the court today, if this was a Muslim ban, it was terribly drafted. It doesn't reference Muslims. It's not based on Muslims. It was based on an objective standard applied worldwide by multiple agencies and approved by multiple cabinet officials, where 92% of Muslims are not banned, where the countries that are banned include countries that are not majority Muslim countries, such as Venezuela and North Korea, countries that simply do not have the means to assure us that their methods of issuing passports can provide security and safety to the American people. So even if the First Amendment did apply, and when it's dubious that it does, this was not a violation of that First Amendment at all.
All right, I want to play a little bit of what the newest Justice Gorsuch, had to say today about the side issue of, in any of these cases, a single district court judge can shut something down by issuing an injunction that is acting nationwide. They can shut down a whole federal law or policy, and then get reaction from both of you. Here's Justice Gorsuch.
We have this troubling rise of this nationwide injunction, cosmic injunction, not limited to relief for the parties at issue or even a class action. And near as I can tell, that's a really new development where a district court asserts the right to strike down a federal statute with regard to anybody, anywhere in the world. What do we do about that?
Harry, to you first and quickly so we can get reaction from both. What do we do about that?
Sure. I'm not sure what he means that it's new. That's always been the ability of a district court if the ban is that broad. And on the other point of Robert, I do think it would be clearly a violation if you could show it was against Muslims, but Alito said, let's keep the questions out of it. I think it will prevail even given the possible animus.
Okay, and Robert, what do you think about this issue that Justice Gorsuch brought up? It's kind of a side issue in this case, but a number of people are now raising the alarm over the ability of one lower court judge to do it. Does it encourage parties to forum shop in places like the Ninth Circuit that they know will probably be hostile to some of this president's policies?
Oh, precisely. The Supreme Court previously, in 1993, when the district court tried to issue a nationwide ban related to gays in the military, said it was completely inappropriate for a district court to usurp that authority. Their authority is over their jurisdiction, not the entire world. If you believe the liberals in this case, Hillary was sponsoring honeymoon tours for liberals to Libya. The president has specifically identified security and safety risks, and it wasn't a district court judge's in Hawaii job to usurp that obligation that's uniquely the president's to keep the country safe.
Robert, you made Harry laugh with that last line about the Libyan honeymoons.
No, it was just the Hillary. It's always Hillary. But thanks for having us.
All right, well, we'll leave it there. We'll wait and see what we get come June when we expect to get this decision. Harry and Robert, thank you both for lending us your expertise.
Thank you, Shannon.
Thank you, ma'am.
All right, Alfie Evans, clinging to life at last check, his parents refusing to leave his side. Their fight reaching a new stage tonight, and the government's resistance to them, it's going up a whole notch, too. We'll fill you in straight ahead. And in California, the ultimate cold case, 12 murders, 51 rapes, maybe more. For more than 40 years, the suspect, an ex-police officer, has been living quietly in California. But last night, police say they got their man. Alder Hey Hospital in Liverpool is reportedly on lockdown tonight after supporters of the family of baby Alfie Evans threatened to storm the building. Their reaction to yet another legal defeat earlier in the day. 23-month-old Alfie suffers from a neurodegenerative disease. Now, the hospital says there is no hope of recovery, but his parents are fighting to transfer him to another facility willing to give some unique treatment options a try. But so far, the hospital continues to block any transfer of the little boy. We'll keep you updated. A major development in a decades-old case. Officials in California announcing today they arrested the man they believe is the Golden State Killer. For more than 4 decades, the identity of the person who murdered 12 people and raped dozens more in the 70s and 80s has been a mystery. Well, Trace Gallagher is live with more on the man police say did it. Trace.
Shannon, the investigation has been active now for 42 years, and Joseph James DeAngelo's name was never mentioned until 6 days ago. The 72-year-old suspect has lived unbothered in a Sacramento suburb for more than 3 decades. And when the majority of the 45 rapes and 12 murders happened, DeAngelo was a police officer. But he was fired from law enforcement for shoplifting a hammer and a can of dog repellent. He never contested his termination, and experts say that's likely because he wanted to avoid a deeper investigation. In 1976, the suspect was initially dubbed the East Area Rapist after a series of sexual assaults in East Sacramento that all followed the same pattern: prying open a window, shining a flashlight in the victim's eyes, raping them at knife point, and in some cases later taunting them by calling them on the phone. In 1979, the same year Joseph DeAngelo left law enforcement in Northern California, a string of rapes and murders began happening in Southern California. Police called that suspect the Night Stalker. In 2001, with advances in forensic technology, investigators found the DNA from crimes committed by the Night Stalker matched the DNA from the East Area Rapist. Then last week came the needle in the haystack. Watch.
A lot of exclusions of other folks. Got this person that looked like he might be our guy, and then we're able to get at least an initial discarded DNA sample that gave us more confidence that this was our person, and we're able to continue and get a better, more workable sample of DNA.
The sheriff wouldn't clarify exactly where the discarded DNA came from, and he wouldn't specify how the investigation narrowed in on DeAngelo. But a former undersheriff who worked this case back in the 70s says the arrest was welcome news. Watch.
This morning, I've been able to talk to 4 or 5 of the victims that we've had contact with, and tears of joy, and tears that they can finally go to sleep and not think about the man in the mask at the foot of their bed.
A current best-selling book about the Golden State Killer by the late crime writer Michelle McNamara renewed interest in the case, but it did not offer new evidence. Joseph DeAngelo was initially charged with 2 counts of homicide. Now it's 6, and we expect the number to go up. Shannon.
It's absolutely stunning. All right, Trace, thank you for updating us.
Yep.
Bill Cosby's fate now in the hands of a dozen jurors. 7 men, 5 women are deliberating in the actor-comedian's sex assault retrial. Cosby facing 3 counts of aggravated indecent assault. Each one carries a maximum sentence of 10 years in prison. Prosecutors say Cosby drugged and molested a woman at his home outside Philadelphia back in 2004. Brian Yennis is tracking the case for us tonight.
Shannon, Bill Cosby's fate is now in the hands of the jury. Cosby is accused of sexually assaulting Andrea Constant at his home in January of 2004. She was an operations manager with Temple University's women's basketball team. Cosby was a university trustee. The 80-year-old comedy icon faces 3 felony indecent aggravated assault charges, and if convicted, faces up to 30 years in prison. Constant alleges that Cosby invited her to his home, gave her 3 blue pills, and then sexually assaulted her. Cosby admits that the 2 had sexual contact, but he says it was consensual. The defense contends the blue pills were Benadryl. Cosby's defense is now led by celebrity lawyer Tom Mesereau, who famously defended Michael Jackson. This retrial took a decisively combative tone. In court, he's called Constant a pathological liar, a con artist, and a gold digger. In 2006, Cosby paid Constant $3.4 million in a civil settlement. The defense even blasted Constant for not going to a doctor after the alleged rape.
Questioning an accuser
is not shaming a victim. These accusations are ridiculous.
The prosecution argued that Cosby has a pattern of using his celebrity to betray the trust of women. In this retrial, 5 other accusers were allowed to testify, including former supermodel Janice Dickinson. Dickinson told the court Cosby gave her a blue pill and sexually assaulted her in 1982.
This is the first test since the Me Too movement. This is going to be the first answer to my question, which is, how many women does it take before one woman is believed?
Last summer, the case ended in a mistrial. That jury deliberated for 5.5 days, 52 hours, and was hopelessly deadlocked. Shannon?
Brian Yennis, thank you very much. We'll wait on that jury now. We'll stick around for Fox News at Night exclusive. Jillian Turner got access to an elite team of law enforcers trying to make America's borders safe again. She's got an insider report you do not want to miss. Plus, we look at the Trump administration's next move after a judge ruled, hey, guess what? It's time to start adding new dreamers to the rolls. And now, a Fox News at Night exclusive. We're going to give you a rare look into Operation Triple Beam. It's an undercover project of the U.S. Marshal Service to crack down on MS-13 and other violent gangs. Fox News got the only look at this, traveled to the southern border region. Here is Jillian Turner with our inside report.
So hopefully it's going to be a one-stop shop. Get all 3 in custody.
The U.S. Marshal Service invited Fox News to join the hunt for the worst of the worst. Gang leaders, drug dealers, fugitives, and human traffickers. Today's target, 3 capital murder suspects. Mission accomplished.
The marshal's job is to grab the body. We've been the U.S. government's manhunters since 1789, and we're the best of the world at it.
The marshals are kind of like your federal sheriff and constable all rolled into one.
You go through the access gate? U.S. Marshals are currently running Operation Triple Beam, a joint effort with state and local police to take down major gangs that proliferate along the border, including MS-13, the 59 Bounty Hunters, and the Tango Blast. They're all in the border region to generate revenue any way they can, selling drugs, illegal firearms, and sex trafficking.
We always have high numbers on the border.
The world's most dangerous gangs consider the U.S.-Mexico border their home turf, and the Marshals expect the operation in this single, secret location to produce several hundred arrests. In essence, Triple Beam's a franchise operation that the Marshals bring from city to city. They work one location for 90 days at a time and say the strategy has yielded some major results over time. Since 2010, more than 6,000 arrests, the seizure of 1,500 illegal firearms, more than $1.5 million in cash, and over $6 million of narcotics. Fox News was on the scene with the team as this crack bus went down in a parking lot known to be a favorite spot for local dealers. The acting deputy director of the Marshals explains the mission is spread out across the country in order to rout out gang members wherever they are. The goal is simple and straightforward: protect Americans in the cities and towns where they live.
Whether it be MS-13 or any other gang, these gangs are terrorizing our communities.
The Marshals also claim they strive to stay outside the fray of Washington politics. The deputy director tells Fox News his focus is on what communities need, and that the Marshals execute their mission without focusing on the citizenship status of the people they protect. They're just in it to get the bad guys. Shannon?
It's a lot of hard work. Jillian, thank you very much. Well, yet another federal judge ruling against the Trump administration on those hundreds of thousands of so-called dreamers, young immigrants whose status isn't clear thanks to an Obama-era executive order. Well, the Trump administration says it's not legal. Now the White House has 90 days to better explain its legal position on DACA, or else it's actually going to have to start accepting new applicants. Attorney General Jeff Sessions was asked about the ruling earlier today.
Wouldn't it make sense for the administration to revisit the bipartisan DACA compromise that was proposed earlier this year?
DACA was basically rejected by Congress. Congress did not pass it. And the president had said repeatedly he could not do it on his own.
So let's bring in tonight's panel. Fox News contributor and syndicated radio host Leslie Marshall and radio host Larry O'Connor. Great to have you both with us tonight.
Hi, Shannon.
Thank you for having me. So unlike the 2 other judges who've ruled against the administration and saying you can't shut down the DACA program, this judge says you actually have to reopen it, and within 90 days you got to start taking new applications, or else What do you make of it, Larry?
Yeah, DACA wasn't legislation from Congress signed into law by Barack Obama. It wasn't a constitutional amendment. It wasn't even an executive order. It was a memo. It was a memo. And for a federal court to decide that a new president can't reverse a memorandum from the prior president, why don't we just suspend all elections now? We don't need presidents. We'll just have somebody be there, a caretaker for everything that Barack Obama did, because we can't change anything. It's ridiculous.
All right. Well, Congressman Goodlatte, who is the chair of the House Judiciary Committee, said this, much as Larry did. The DACA program was unilaterally created by the Obama administration in a memo penned by former Homeland Security Secretary Napolitano. Just as easily as it was issued, it can be rescinded. Presidential policy is not set in stone and often changes from one administration to the next. But Leslie, so far, 3 judges do not agree.
Well, yes, there are 3 judges that don't agree, and we might note that the 3rd was a George W. Bush appointee, and that is a Republican president. So this is not partisan. What he is saying is, look, you have 90 days to tell me the specifics with regard to criminality. Jeff Sessions in the Department of Justice in the past and even recently have said this has to do with the issue of national security and protecting and securing our borders, where we're talking about 690,000 individuals approximately who are already within our borders, who we know we don't have the means and the finances to deport, if you will, and to constantly say, oh, Congress isn't passing it. Of course they haven't passed it because they constantly have other line items like the wall attached to such pieces of legislation.
Okay, here's a little bit more of what the judge said. He said neither the meager legal reasoning nor the assessment of litigation risk provided by DHS to support its rescission decision, that's to get rid of DACA, is sufficient to sustain termination of the DACA program. But Larry, at this point, if these judges are going to keep ruling in favor of DACA and not only to keep it alive, but to renew it and take new applications, what kind of motivation is there going to be for Democrats to go back to the table and negotiate?
Well, no. And listen, this is going to go to the Supreme Court. And don't forget, there's still a lawsuit against the constitutionality of DACA in the first place because Barack Obama overstepped his bounds by actually trying to write in legislation via the executive branch, which he couldn't do. But the fact that this was a George W. Bush appointee is meaningless. In fact, it reinforces the fact that something really scary is going on in our federal courts right now. If this judge wants to write law, he should run for office. But the judicial branch is not supposed to do this sort of thing and overstep their bounds. You know how I know this is a bad decision? Because when Hillary Clinton was running for president, it was only a year and a half ago, she was running saying, don't elect Donald Trump, he'll reverse DACA. Barack Obama was on the stump saying, don't elect Donald Trump, he'll reverse DACA. They weren't sitting there saying, oh, don't worry, it can't be reversed because it would be unconstitutional. Okay. This obviously is something that can be reversed by this president.
Let's give a quick final word here to Leslie. I mean, do Republicans now have more motivation to get to the table and try to make a deal on DACA? Because if not, it looks like the judge is going to reopen the floodgates.
Yes, definitely. Although Larry would say Democrats, don't have as much incentive. I think I'll agree with you there. One of the reasons I know it's a good deal is that I agree with the judge's decision and Larry doesn't. No, all joking aside, Republicans are going to have to come to the table. But the reality here is, Shannon, that the constituents throughout the country, left or right, majority of people don't feel that these individuals who came here as children with their parents should be punished. They do feel and look at them differently than other documents.
That's fine.
I know you're
need to be protected.
Then pass a law.
I know you're chomping at the bit, but we got to leave it there. Come back. We'll discuss it again. Leslie and Larry,
Thanks,
great to see you both.
Thanks, Leslie.
All right, it has been 10 months since the shooting at that congressional baseball practice in Arlington. Up next, we're going to take you inside practice with some of the lawmakers who returned to that very same field where Steve Scalise was almost killed. They were back there today.
I look over there and I immediately flash back to when I finally got my bearings that morning, looking to my right and seeing Steve Scalise down.
2017, a gunman opened fire on members of the Republican congressional baseball team. House Majority Whip Steve Scalise, who's still recovering, and 4 others were wounded. Today, some of the lawmakers made the emotional journey back to the field.
This baseball field I think it epitomizes what makes America great.
Fox News senior congressional producer Chad Pergram was there today to be with them. What can you tell us, Chad?
Well, this was unfinished business. A baseball practice which started last June on a sweltering morning, finished in a chilly mist in April. But this was more than just a practice. It was a therapy session for members of Congress who hadn't been to the field in 10 months. Chuck Fleischman of Tennessee and Rodney Davis of Illinois came back out to the field in Alexandria, Virginia to loosen their muscles ahead of the season and recall last June's horror, where they sprinted for their lives.
Trent Kelly was on third base because Trent told me later that the shooter pointed the gun right at him and missed. Larry and I believe, went and lay down over here somewhere. It might have been even a little bit further up over here. And then when it didn't stop, the barrage continued. I made a run for the dugout, and I knew there were people in the dugout, and all I could think of, bear in mind, I didn't know that the shooter had moved from where he was around this way. I still thought he was over here, and all I could think about when I was running was he's going to shoot me in the back.
Every time I walk out of that one exit that we had, I just remember looking up and seeing that shed I hid behind, and I look over there and I immediately flash back to when I finally got my bearings that morning, looking to my right and seeing Steve Scalise down. And from my perspective, he wasn't moving. You know, that is a horrific scene that I'll never get over.
It's gut-wrenching to know that, you know, I'm 15 miles away from where 2 of my officers were injured. Some of our principals were critically injured.
U.S. Capitol Police Chief Matt Verderosa says things will be different for this season.
Last year was certainly an eye-opener for a lot of people. It made members of Congress, I think, really feel that vulnerability that exists. The threats are real, and we will have a robust presence for the practices and the game that occurs in June.
They'll practice some at the field in Alexandria as well as other locations just to mix it up for security purposes. But the first base dugout where many of the players fled for safety, there's still a bullet hole. When they went to practice in Alexandria, that will be a reminder of the terror here last year, Shannon.
That is such a fantastic inside look, and remembering what it's like for them to go through that and be back there today. Chad, thank you very much.
Anytime.
All right, earlier in the hour, we told you about the good news on President George H.W. Bush's health. Up next, you'll be getting much more. Stay around.